opening reception for an art exhibition at Berkeley Fellowship of Unitarian Universalists. We got started in 2017. So we're delighted that all of you came out, and I see people from various groups that I'm a part of, most prominently Berkeley folk dancers. So you came to see the amazing photos on the walls, which come from years of work and recent work by James Lerager. So we began in, yay for James. We began our practice of inviting local artists to show their work in 2017. And we wanted to create a more beautiful sanctuary for the hundreds of people who come through this room each week. And equally important was to provide a space for underrecognized artists to display and sell their work. And some of our exhibitors have been Edith Boone, the local muralist, Guy Colwell, the cartoonist and painter, and Reverend Gail Asali Dixon, the graphic artist for the Black Panther newspaper. We've also had 3 shows by art education programs that work with young people, the Social Justice Sewing Academy, Art Esteem, and Youth Spirit Artworks. So belatedly, as we were in the middle of all this, we named this program. We called it Behold, Be Bold. And I think that the spirit of that has been very much evident in all the work that's here. So we've had realist art and abstract art. Today marks a different approach that we're showing people out in the streets acting on their values and our values. We're showing social protest art, and it's kind of overdue. I'm glad we're doing it now. So marching is the purest form of immediate expression of the will of the people. It's a way to tell the powers that be that their decisions are harming people and demanding that they change. So, let me see what else I wanted to say. You all know from demonstrations, we're all old-time marchers and demonstrators. And the power of the creativity and the joy when we're out in the streets together, and sometimes the exhaustion as well. And you also know that it's hard to get good photographs. It's often a blur, things that you think were just wonderful, and you snap it, and didn't turn out so well. Well, James has overcome all that. And so the information about James is here in the literature, and he has done so much that I'm not going to overwhelm you with reading it. He is a well-established photojournalist, largely self-taught, who has exhibited his work in many places, from Harvard to Stanford to MIT, and he's produced a couple of books. So I'm going to turn this over to James and let him say whatever he wants to say.
Thank you. Is this my mic? Okay. I think we have 2 live mics here.
Just use the other mic,
Okay.
the one that's on the stand, yeah.
Yeah. It's really a pleasure to be with all of you. And to be in this space and with this community. I'm here because of Joanna, because Pat and I, my partner, joined Berkeley Folk Dancers with David and many others. There's 250 members. Just last January. And they have a mailing list, and I've took the opportunity or the hubris of actually sending out to the group my pictures from the marches from 2025 in groups. And Joanna introduced it to the community here, some of my photographs, and invited me to come over just less than a month ago. And I brought some photographs and showed some prints. And the walls did not have an exhibit at that time. And I think everybody, Virginia and Jillian were the group that I met with, really wanted to show my work. And fortunately, I already had an existing exhibition. The ones on these walls and here, I exhibited a couple of years ago, and they come from marches from 2017 to 2020, the first Trump regime, which I thought would hopefully be the only Trump regime. The women's marches, the youth marches, the March for Science, marches for environment. And you'll be seeing photographs from 2017 to 2020. This is actually from a book manuscript, but it's unpublished so far. 15 photographs each from 8 different marches. And since I had the prints already made, and I was also photographing last year, in 2025, I've been to 6 or 7 marches together with Raphael, virtually all of them, and with Pat, going together to these marches and witnessing and participating, because when I'm photographing, I am participating. I'm not separate, as some photojournalists are. I am in the mix. I get as close as I can and try to engage with people with my eyes and with my camera, and try to capture the feeling and the sensibility of being in these different events. I've done that with pretty much all of my work. 3 of my friends, photography friends, are here today, Andy Partos, Rufus Diamant, and Frank Tapia, who I've been in community with since the 1970s. And and all of them work with people. They would do imagery, yes, other imagery, but often including, and usually including, people. Andy and I were just talking about that. Our interest is in people and environment, interactions, the feeling of life, whether it be sad or joyful, hopefully often joyful. And also a very close friend of mine, Gar Smith, is here today. He's an incredible writer back from the free speech movement. He was a writer for the Berkeley Barb, but he's written a number of books. He, like me, has worked on nuclear issues and environmental issues extensively, and writes about international issues. Gar, I know you're here. I'm not seeing you at the moment, but I know you're here. And but I really want to say that I have not spent time in this particular community, this Unitarian Universalist community. I've been here for a few events. I know that many events are held here, but not ever for a service. And when I first came here 3 weeks ago, I was deeply moved by the music, by the people, by the sense of connection, the sharing of food, and I was here again last week. I had the same feeling. We did have the photographs up, and I'm really excited about this particular exhibition, particularly because if you have an exhibition at a gallery, even an important one at a museum, at a university campus or in another space, quote, important exhibitions. There'll often be a opening for anywhere from 50 to 200 or 300 people. And I've had exhibitions of that size. And then the exhibition will be up for a month or 2 months, perhaps, maybe 3 months. And most of the people that ever see the exhibit came for the opening. Even if, from your own experience, going to a museum, you're overwhelmed with work and you walk through it. You don't stop and you don't live with it. This is an opportunity because there are people here every day. There's events here every day. There's public events of various sorts with authors, with different groups that meet here, with the Friday night dancing, the open mic, so many events here that you as a community will be living together with these photographs in your community and living these marches. And one of what I think, much of what I attempt to do is to go to places and have experiences that other people might not have. I mean, I've worked a lot on nuclear issues, and I've been to Russia, Kazakhstan, I've been to Japan, I've been to the Marshall Islands, but also at sites in the United States, Hanford. I've been on the Nevada test site several times, photographed on those things. Often there's not a lot of people, but I will look for people to place in the photographs to give context. But I've always seen this as something that would be dear to Raphael's heart. This is a shamanic journey. This is a journey. This is journey work, and I'm going to attempt to bring it back and share, take people places and have their own experience of something that they would not normally experience. I think in that way, it's, at least for me, for what I'm attempting to do and hope to do sometimes, is very similar to what Raphael does with his poetry that you experienced this morning, and with his spirit, because he's on a spirit journey also, and he knows it. And he shares that journey with so many, not just with his poetry, with his being. And I couldn't say how much happier that I could possibly be in knowing Raphael for the last 8 or 9 years. We have been to many of these marches, as I mentioned, together. I'm going to say a little bit about my own journey. My being a photographer came out of being in the Peace Corps in Africa. And being in the Peace Corps in Africa, although that was my intention to do that, it was also forced on me because of the Vietnam War and being from San Diego and being raised in a military community where I thought my highest form of adult behavior would be to become a naval officer until the Vietnam War came along. And then I became a protester. And then I had a San Diego draft board that wanted to see me in Vietnam. And so I went into the Peace Corps, and then I fought being drafted for the entire 3 years that I was in Africa, and then got drafted, although I did not go into the service. However, that got me, Africa to me was so visual, even though I was not a photographer, I was not an artist. My undergraduate degree is in social policy economics from Berkeley. And I bought a secondhand Nigromat between my second and third years, or between my first and second years, and started taking some pictures of people in place in West Africa, because I was in Ethiopia for a year and 2 years in Ghana. And those photographs, 12 rolls of film, later became my first exhibition at the Anthropology Museum at UC Berkeley. It was up for 6 months. People in place in West Africa. I wrote some text, 35 photographs. And then I had to learn how to make a living, because I found out having a major exhibition at that time and a payphone and a quarter, you could make a local phone call. And I had met Andy and Rufus, and Andy was a noted local photographer, it still is, and working with, as a wedding photographer, a portrait photographer, but also working with social organizations. And he helped me, sort of mentored me into photography, working in his darkroom, black and white photograph with a dirt floor. It was quite a remarkable place, making prints. And I started exhibiting. I was also working for the East Bay Express, doing photo essays for the East Bay Express, and photographed, I think in the 80s, I photographed about 250 weddings. And it really honed my skills with a big fat Hasselblad. It really honed my seeing. And part of being a photographer for me has been about learning how to focus, learning how to see, learning how to integrate information, put it together. Andy and I were just talking about that a little earlier over lunch. Andy, perhaps you and Rufus, and maybe Frank could say a word, maybe Raphael could too, about the experience of being together and doing things together. Would you mind doing that? Yeah.
I'm Andy, and this is Rufus, and this is Frank. Come on up. What are we doing? And we're a trio, and we sing the photography blues. James, it's great to be here and to see your work, which is really so striking, impressive. And I would commend you. I congratulate you, and I tell you personally how much I value and appreciate your vision and your ability to bring the power of these visual images to bear on us in a socially redeeming way through the unique ability to isolate images from a larger scene, to condense it down to a striking image that would, if you're there, most people catch a glimpse of something and then it's gone into an area that's very hard to recall. So each image recalled this way makes a statement that's more powerful than it was almost at the time, I would venture to say. That's a strength and talent and skill that you have developed into an extraordinary way. So, thank you.
I have always admired Jim, not simply for his technical skills, but his psychological ability to go into very difficult situations and come up with some beautiful images. Throughout the years, I've observed Jim do this numerous times, and again, greatly appreciate his work.
Well, I've known Jim for, 55 years or something like that, and well, he and Andy and I had a studio together, so we got to know each other through that process. But I've always admired Jim for his social activism and his understanding that photography is a very powerful weapon, if you want to call it that. And that's actually why I went into photography myself in the first place, as a documentary filmmaker. And after doing that for a few years, I realized I couldn't make that a living, so I went into still photography, which is also a tough road to go. But I really appreciate your work, Jim, especially in the realm of the nuclear dangers that we face today more than ever. Because fortunately, through some of the accidents that you were able to document, there was really a pretty much a hiatus in building nuclear plants here in this country. I don't think there was a single one built over the last 50 years or so.
Just recently, yeah, a couple in Georgia.
Yeah, and
And they cost $30 billion instead of $10 billion to build.
yeah.
And they've taken 20 years to build.
Oh, it's big money, and now I think there are 11 of them on the drawing board, because AI, after all, is all powerful and needs power. So there is a lot that we're going to be facing in just the next few years, and the kind of resistance that you have modeled is something I think that we all should really take to heart and speak out about, because again, and what you're doing right now is documenting the necessity for us to resist all this that's going on. And the resistance is definitely right here in the streets, and I really appreciate seeing the work that you've done. And the humor, if I may add, because we do have to keep smiling and reassuring each other that we can really change things.
Raphael? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
What we usually do at these receptions, we do what we call the gallery tour. We walk around and the artist talks about individual works. We've got too many people and too many photos here to do that today. But I do want to open it up to question and answer, either about the process of photographing demonstrations or particular images that capture your attention and that you want to ask questions about or comment about. So,
To Raphael, yeah.
Raphael.
All right. I just want to say how much fun it is to attend the rallies with friends. Linda, David, and James, and Pat. And it's just fun that we have, and it's great hanging out with James here, who has an artist's eye for capturing the moment, that time that we have. And I only regret that his book has not been published, because he would make a wonderful coffee table book of the sheer beauty of people, of folk, where it's hard at that moment with the crowd to really see the beauty that surrounds us in the faces of our brothers and sisters. But James captures them so that in moments of quiet, we can revisit those things and re-inspire us to have that courage and to have that joy to get out there and place ourselves. James, good trouble.
Good trouble. I also want to, Raphael spoke so much about poetry, and pretty much all that he said, I also feel, and at least in the way that I approach photography. It's because there's many ways to do photography, whatever that may be. But for me, it's about seeing. Yes, I know a lot about the technology of photography, a lot, because I've practiced it. And I practice it in order to convey what I want to what I want to share with people, because that's how I am. But it's not about the technology, because these photographs were all taken last year, and many more were taken with an iPhone, including that very large print. And so there's no point in me carrying a large professional camera anymore, a big black object in people's faces, when I can have a small, relatively small device that people are familiar with that does not put a barrier between me. However, all of these photographs were taken with a professional camera also. So it's not necessarily a barrier, but for me, the iPhone technically has the ability, because I do work in Photoshop, but it has the ability to capture what I need to convey a high quality image that people will not see just as a technical object, but as an object that they're part of. And I also see, as Raphael said about words, I look at photography and these forms of imagery as a symbolic language. Because even though they're real things, they are also, all of them are symbols. People's faces are symbols. People's dress and their body, it takes us into a symbolic realm. And actually, when we think about some of the bros in Silicon Valley, and we look at their body language, they're not very approachable, but they're communicating to us. And with the technology they create is not very approachable, even though it has the pretense of connecting us. What it has done is divide us in very large part. So I'm not going to say any more about that, but the idea, also for me, actually, becoming a photographer really was about learning how to see and focus. I really want to emphasize that, because I have to capture a frame. I cannot just use my intellect. I have to feel patterns of information and just move very quickly and dance. As Pat knows, when I'm photographing in these crowds, I'm really dancing. So let's open it up to other discussion or questions.
James, I don't need the mic. I just wanted to remind you, when
Mm-hmm.
is movement. And after you said that, the way I'm looking at your pictures, I see that movement. Can you say more about it?
You know, in some ways, I don't know that I can, how much I can do. I do know, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, it's many decades now, but I also know when I go to a demonstration, I do not go with the crowd. I go into the crowd. And I'm looking for patterns around me. People, a banner, or people's faces, or a gathering, or some musicians, and I will try to get myself over there, and I'm looking for patterns. You can see I do often set my cameras at an angle. And it's really quite intentional because it creates a different, more vibrant, it can create a more vibrant pattern. But the patterns have to be there. And yes, every one of these is probably 4 or 5 frames, every image here. But nevertheless, I'm still selecting the one that has the most vibrancy, and I'm looking at the background. Even when I'm looking for photographs, I'm simultaneously looking at the foreground and the background. But I don't have time to think about it. I'm looking, learning to see, learning to look, learning to feel patterns. I do it with a feeling sense. I very much do it with a feeling sense. And I try to interact with people, look in their faces, catch their attention. They know when I'm photographing them usually. You can see that in many of these faces. They know that I'm taking their picture and that I'm smiling at them. So is that enough about that for the moment? Yeah. Discussion? Any of your ideas? David, I know you have a lot to say.
I have a question. Are you going to be at the No Kings at the end of the month?
I'm hoping I am. My hips have gone out on me just in the last few months. I got very sick. It really affected my hip area, and I did have osteoarthritis. I've had both knees replaced so I can keep dancing. And it turns out that I have something that's rather rare. My hips are now disintegrating. So I have the first hip replacement on March 25th, and then a month later, probably the second hip replacement. But I'm hoping that I'm mobile enough that I can get to a march, even if I stay in one place, and just let the march go past me.
We'll take some pictures for you.
Yeah, Pat's going to take pictures for me, too. Actually, if all of you want to take pictures and give them to me afterwards, I'll edit a story with them. I'll take them into Photoshop and I'll put them into patterns and see what we can come up with together. That's great. Thank you. Thank you, David. David is a member and a leader within the Berkeley folk dancers community, as is Joanna, and as is Andy and Cornelia. Perhaps others here are too. It's a wonderful community. It's a very loving and vibrant community, as is this Unitarian community. There's a lot of overlap in terms of feeling sets, and I think Joanna could say that. There's a sense of real community, which is what we need to be able to move our world in a different way. I would say one thing about what's going on politically. Now, I know the United States has some tremendous, the Declaration of Independence, et cetera, unrealized dreams that have also inspired the world in many ways. However, I also know in my own lifetime, the Vietnam War, 3 million Vietnamese dead. A conflagration against the Vietnamese peoples. People are still dying. And when that war seemingly ended, the United States government, the CIA, worked with the Pol Pot regime in their genocidal movement against their own people, and another couple million died with the assistance of the United States. Also.
5 million then. Yeah.
Central America, hundreds of thousands dead, mostly indigenous people, tortured, driven into exile, even into the United States, hundreds of thousands that we know about. They're still digging up the graves. But even in Guatemala, where the majority of people are indigenous, they're not even second-class citizens. Indigenous people within Guatemala in their traditional role. And then we have the first Gulf War, supposedly short, but then the United States allowed Saddam Hussein. We encourage people to rise up against Saddam Hussein, and then we allow Saddam Hussein to kill several 100,000 people. We did, while we sat back as a country. And then we had Iran, well, we had Iraq, and we had Afghanistan, but we basically changed the nature of the Middle East then in our forever wars. Again, millions of people dead, not that many of them Americans, trillions of dollars in tribute spent. And now we're at it again. But I'm saying that those were not under a dictatorship. Those were under our government as it existed, even as it proclaimed democracy to the world and did some good things also. And here we are today. I would have to say that what we're faced with collectively is we had a government and a form of democracy that kind of worked, but mostly worked for the rich. But kind of worked, with some redistribution, some public education, some help for children. Under Obama, a sort of a fragmented and inadequate form of public health. And now that's all been blown away. And we need something different than what we had before. That was not sufficient to save us socially, environmentally. Whatever was going on before has to change if we are going to build real communities, a country of community. And that's what I hope these marches are about. I found Indivisible to be unique. It's now a very large organization, but it's connected to about 300 other organizations, and it's based in the civil rights movement, which goes also back to Gandhi, Martin Luther King, peaceful nonviolent resistance. You have to be willing to actually get arrested or beaten, and you have to stay peaceful and joyful in your community, which is what is happening in these marches. To me, there's a fundamental difference between the marches and the actions as I feel them, between 2017 and 2020. Between 2017 and 2020, there was a little bit of joy, but a lot of anger. Also, as time went on, the marches became smaller and smaller, and people's jaws got set, that there was more and more anger. And you can see that these are early pictures from the 2017 to 2020 period. So the first march in San Francisco was estimated 120,000 people, 80,000 in Oakland, 80,000 in San Jose. Next year, fewer people. The year after that, by 2020, the last Women's March, there were about 30,000 people. What's happening today with the No Kings marches and the other marches is that the marches have grown. And they're joyful. And the last march was, the estimate that's being used for last October 18th, No Kings 2, was 7 million people. That's 7 million people that registered to march across the country in small communities and large. There's over 2,700 indivisible groups now across the country, all of which are a little different and all of which are independent but coordinating with each other. And these other 270 groups, 300 groups that are now in alliance, all doing different work and communicating with each other. And these marches are growing, unlike 2017 to 2020. And they're incredibly joyful and becoming more joyful. And the earlier ones last year were mostly boomers, mostly our group. What has been happening is more and more younger people, more and more people of color are now joining, more and more families are joining. On October 18th last year in San Francisco, quite a significant part of the people that were participating are younger people. And everybody was enjoying being present with each other. And they were carrying American flags. Perhaps 1 in 3 people carried an American flag. So 7 million people, those were people who registered for the marches. Put their names down. You've probably had many mailings said, put your name down, I'm going to be there. I was talking to people on October 18th as I was photographing, we were participating in the event, and most people didn't even know Indivisible existed, had not registered, they just heard about it and wanted to be there. So I think even on October 18th, there were far more than 7 million people across the country. And I have to say, onward. And it's more than just going on a march. It's more than going on a march. It's building the communities, as this is a community, as Berkeley folk dancers, as Indivisible is forming communities across the country. And Jillian?
So March 28th is expected to be the largest number of protesters in U.S. history taking to the streets. Raise your hand if you're going to take to the streets on March 28th. Yes. And Jillian, I was next. I'll hand it to you after. So Jillian is helping to organize, I think, the Oakland March, and there'll be a UU contingent, and people who aren't UU are also welcome to join that contingent. And people who are maybe wanting a smaller march, an easier march, there will be one from when Michael Pollan finishes his speech at noon at Zellerbach Theater. All those young pioneers are ripe for the picking.
Oh, that's Pioneers
So we're going to
Weekend.
direct them to Bancroft Way, and we'll be marching down Bancroft Way to downtown. Raphael and Mike and I and Stephanie Thomas are organizing this. And we'll probably continue on to MLK Park. And Afia Talking Stick has agreed to transfer her drum circle to the march. She's going to march with us and her drummers. And possibly also up on campus, the Samba Funk Band. So that might be an easier march for people in wheelchairs or scooters or people who want a shorter march. Mike has kindly agreed to drive alongside slowly. Maybe he could carry you in his car. I am an old dancing hippie with a new hip. And so that's why I asked him, if I can't make the whole march, then maybe he'll take my place on the front lines and I'll drive his car. All right.
Thanks, Phoebe. And James, thank you. Your photos are such an inspiration. They really are. I have to tell you, my favorite is the wrong Amazon is burning. I'm really happy that you've given us the history of the numbers. And I just want to remind people that what the experts tell us, the historians, is that we need 13 million people in the streets. And once we do that, things will start to change. And one of the reasons is the more people that are out, the more confidence people get that they can do something. The administration stays in place because it's being supported by many different institutions, right? The military, business, education, the legal profession. Once you have 13 million people in the streets, you will start to get defections. And that is what we need. How do we destabilize the administration? By getting support systems to defect from them. So, please, and I echo what Phoebe said, be there and please speak to everybody in your immediate affinity circles and encourage them and tell them this is the time. No Kings 3.
Go
Thank
to indivisible.org if you want more information, and it will link you to all the other organizations. There is a No Kings organization also.
There is.
Register, tell other people about it. In particular, that I've found very interesting is on Thursday afternoons, noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time, every week, the founders of Indivisible, who founded it in 2017, have a Zoom call with 7 to 10 to 12,000 people on the Zoom call every week. And the first thing they do is they announce some of the new chapters of Indivisible, which are forming not only in the United States but around the world. And then they make a brief presentation about what they see going on, or what's going on with the organization or with other organizations. Usually the first 20 minutes of an hour talk. And then other people are sending in questions, and they get voted on by the people who are on the Zoom call. And the ones that rise to the top, the people ask the most questions, then they talk with more deeply. They address those issues, what they're thinking of now, what they might be thinking of organizationally. It's really, really, they're honest that we may not win on this, whatever winning means. But we're there to be there, and we need to be there together and do more than just march. We need to reform our communities and rebuild our communities and bring more and more in with us, reconnect, have our spirits resonate together as they are today. So I really would encourage you, those are kept on YouTube. They've been doing this for a little over a year. It was an experiment. I think that you can go and watch them on Zoom or witness them live. I mean, on YouTube. Just look up Indivisible, Leah and Ezra, whatever you want to do, and you'll find it. I really would encourage you to at least see a few of those weekly meetings.
Yeah. Indivisible East Bay actually meets here.
Oh, they do?
They do. We let them use the fellowship hall. We're very proud of that. And actually, March 22nd, there will be an all-member, and anybody who just walks in and decides they want to join in is a member. So there's a meeting here,
I'll
the
be
afternoon
there.
of March 22nd. Yeah.
Yeah.
What time?
We start at 1:30. We have to squeeze it in. So many people use this hall. We're squeezing it in between 1:30 and 3:30.
Any other commentary?
Where's the cake?
Betsy? Yeah.
Why don't you? Okay.
As an early childhood educator, I faced parents' fears of having their children photographed, and it's become a whole regulatory protocol. And I just wonder, to what degree do you have to deal with this, or don't?
Well, I don't deal with it because I'm not selling these photographs. They're not for commercial use, therefore they're editorial, and therefore anybody in a public space can be photographed. There could be a lawsuit, like a frivolous lawsuit to, say, impoverish me or something like that, but you can't do too much about it. If you're in a public place, you're in a public action, then you can be photographed. But the other thing is, as Leah and Ezra say, remind people almost every week, because questions come up, we have surveillance going on from the government, and we have facial recognition. What's going to happen to me? And, well, they say they're not going to wear masks because we have to be present. And being present, being in the civil rights movement didn't mean you weren't going to get hurt. When even to sit down at the counters at a soda fountain, you had to get trained so that you wouldn't react violently to being beaten or having stuff poured over you or being screamed at. You had to be trained, but you had to stay peaceful, and you had to be present, and you had to be willing to go to jail. Letter from Birmingham jail, and so much more. We may face that, and they say that, and they are there to be seen. We are here to be seen, not hide, and not be intimidated. Many people suffer what happened in Germany, what happens in Russia, people just get arbitrarily picked up, beaten, tortured, thrown in jail, not fed, starved, killed. I mean, it not likely to come to that here, especially if enough of us stand up, but we have to actually face that joyfully. It has to be joyful. We have to stand with our faces exposed and our hearts and with our beings present. That's our journey. That's our journey.
I'd like to emphasize what you had said earlier about that we need to go beyond what we were before. And I hope that, I realize Indivisible and a lot of groups, there's a lot of orientation on vote Democrats into power, but let's vote Democrats that are really progressive.
Yep.
We have a Democratic Party leadership that's corporate owned. They're the problem, and we need to, they're the reason we have a Trump. If they had done things like Medicare for all and education free, and took care of the homeless and built homes for everybody, we wouldn't have had Trump. So let's go beyond, let's take this opportunity to go beyond what we've had before and make this a really great country.
Yeah, and that is at the heart of Indivisible. And they talk about that all the time, going beyond, well beyond. They're not telling you what the structure as a couple, I mean, they're very informed. They're not telling you what the structure should be. We have to go and we will be creating it. I don't mean have to. We will be creating it. It's our choices. We don't know yet what could be created beyond what anything has ever existed. I mean, I would say, look at the Scandinavian countries. 120 years ago, people were fleeing the Scandinavian countries. They couldn't grow enough. They had a repressive so-called Christian Lutheran culture, very paternal, very top-down, and where people learned to judge themselves. Sometime in the early 20th century, they sort of said, some of them started saying, well, actually, maybe we better start taking care of our kids and educating them. Maybe we should try something about healthcare and like building a society that we would like to see. Some of them did. And now those countries living in the far north, at least on a human scale, have the greatest social justice of any countries that have ever existed. And I would say that they would be at the beginning, and they would say that they are. And there's all kinds of people. There's conservative people, there's radical people, there's liberal people, but all of them have health care, and all of them have access to education. Yes, there's some poverty. There's some crazy people. There's not perfect societies. But how can they be when it's all a process? We are always in process, at best, or we die. We die in our hearts, like Silicon Valley. The people in Silicon Valley, what was Google founded on? Don't be evil. And now it's be evil. They dropped the don't. Okay, enough lectures.
Hi, thank you so much. This has been just wonderful. My brother's a photographer. We both protest regularly and send each other pictures of our signs. My favorite one that I've made lately is Trump is the Antichrist. But I also wanted to mention a book relative to what you just said called The Nordic Theory of Everything, which is written by a Finnish woman who married an American and lives in New York. And she got here and she thought, oh, this is going to be so great. And she realized it wasn't great at all. And so she wrote this book. So I recommend that.
Thank you. Wow.
Thank you so much for doing what you do.
Thank you, too. I thank all of you. I mean, really, thank you for the invitation to join you and allow me to get these up on the wall where people can actually participate with them. Because that's my biggest frustration is I don't get to do that as often as I would. At one point I did it quite a bit, and it hasn't been that much lately because it's a little controversial. I've had books not be published by people who wanted to publish them over and over again when their lawyers tell them you might get sued. And people living in fear. And people in this room and in this community are not living in fear. They're living in joy, in connection, or as much as we know how to do it, and keep doing it more and more together. It's about love.
So this has been the most amazing opening art reception that we've ever had, because it has encompassed a political rally. We are a little bit victim of our own success. The chocolate cake that I always make for these occasions, I don't know if there's going to be enough to go around. So there's cake and ice cream back there. You're willing to hang out and talk to other people, admire the photos some more, talk to James. This has been an amazing occasion. Let's give a hand to all of us.
Thank you all. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Jillian. Thank you, Virginia. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, David. Andy, Rufus, Barbara, Betsy. Thank you all.
Thank you, James.
Gar.
Anybody else want to say anything? Okay, let's eat.